Hello? So this is a collection of poetry titled Under the Open Sky. It's the name of the chapter. Once, in the wind of morning, I ranged the thymy wold. The world-wide air was azure, and all the brooks ran gold. There, through the dews beside me, behold a youth that trod, with feathered cap on forehead, and poised a golden rod. With mien to match the morning, and gay delightful guise, and friendly brows, and laughter, he looked me in the eyes. "Oh, whence?" I asked, "and whither?" He smiled and would not say, and looked at me and beckoned, and laughed and led the way. And with kind looks and laughter, and naught to say beside, we two went on together, I and my happy guide. Across the glittering pastures and empty upland still, and solitude of shepherds, high in the folded hill. By hanging woods and hamlets, that gaze through orchards down on many a windmill turning and far discovered town. With gay regards of promise, and sure unslackened stride, and smiles and nothing spoken, led on my merry guide. By blowing realms of woodland, with sun-struck veins of field, and cloud-led shadows sailing about the windy weald. By valley-guarded granges and silver waters wide, content at heart I followed with my delightful guide. And like the cloudy shadows, across the country blown, we two fare on forever, but not we two alone. With a great gale we journey, that breathes from gardens thinned, borne in the drift of blossoms whose petals throng the wind. Buoyed on the heaven-heard whisper of dancing leaflets whirled from all the woods that autumn bereaves in all the world. And, midst the fluttering legion of all that ever died, I follow, and before us goes the delightful guide, with lips that brim with laughter, but never once respond, and feet that fly on feathers, and serpent-circled wand. Merry Guide by A.E. Housman. Loveliest of trees, the cherry now, is hung with bloom along the bough, and stands about the woodland ride, wearing white for Eastertide. Now, of my 80 years and 10, 20 will not come again, and take from 70 springs a score, it only leaves me 50 more. And, since to look at things in bloom, 50 springs are little room, about the woodlands I will go, to see the cherry hung with snow. Loveliest of Trees by A. Housman. The last thin acre of stalks that stood was never the end of the wheat. Always something fled to the wood, as if the field had feet. In front of the sickle something rose, mouse or weasel or hare. We struck and struck, but our worst blows dangled in the air. Nothing could touch the little soul of the grain. It ran to cover, and nobody knew in what warm hole it slept till the winter was over. And early seeds lay cold in the ground then, but nobody saw. It burrowed back with never a sound, and awoke the thaw. Immortal by Mark Van Doren. Wide and shallow in the cowslip marshes, floods the freshet of the April snow. Late drifts linger in the hemlock gorges, through the brakes and mosses trickling slow, where the mayflower, where the painted trillium leaf and blow. Foliaged deep, the cool midsummer maples shade the porches of the long white street. Trailing wide Olympian elms lean over tiny churches where the crossroads meet. Fields of fireflies wheel all night like stars above the wheat. Blaze the mountains in the windless autumn. Frost clear, blue-nooned, apple-ripening days. Faintly fragrant in the farther valleys, smoke of many bonfires swell the haze. Fair-bound cattle plod with lowing up the meadowy ways. Roaring snows, down sweeping from the uplands, bury the still valleys, drift them deep. Low along the mountains, lake blue shadows, sea blue shadows in the snowdrifts sleep. High above them, blinding crystal is the sunlit steep. Vermont, by Sarah N. Cleghorn. The nightingale has a lyre of gold. The lark's is a clarion call. And the blackbird plays but a boxwood flute. But I love him best of all. For his song is all of the joy of life, and we in the mad spring weather, we too have listened till he sang our hearts and lips together. The Blackbird, by W. E. Henley. The maid is out on a clear April light, our store of linen hanging up to dry. On clump of box on the small grass there lie bits of thin lace, embroidery blossom white. And something makes tall Ellen gesture, look, or else but that most ancient simple thing hanging the clothes upon a day in spring, a Greek girl, cut out of some old lovely book. The wet white flaps, a tune just come in mind, the sound brims the still house. Our flags are out, blue by the box, blue by the kitchen stair. Betwixt the two she trips across the wind, her warm hair blown all cloudy wise about, slim as the flags and every whit as fair. Ellen Hanging Clothes, by Lizette Wordsworth Reese. Spring in Kentucky hills will soon awaken. The sap will run in every vein of tree. Green will come to the land bleak and forsaken. Warm silver wind will catch the honeybee. Blood root will whiten on the barren hill. Wind flowers will grow beneath the oaks and nod to silver April wind against their will. Bitterns will break the silence of the hills, and meadows grass subdue under the moons. Pastures will green and bring back whippoorwills and butterflies that break from stout cocoons. Spring in Kentucky hills, and I shall be a free soil man to walk beneath the trees and listen to the wind among the leaves and count the stars and do as I please. Last night the rain thumped on the clapboard roof like feet of house rats running over tin. I laid awake beneath this sheltering roof and listened to a cold wind blowing in. The trees outside and blowing through a crack into my room, stirring the covers on my bed. I slept upstairs in a Kentucky shack. Last night some verse kept running through my head, and I got up and lit the smoke-globed lamp. I took a sheet of paper from the stack. I wrote about a mouse and brown oat stack. The room was mighty cold and dark and damp. I threw the poem out into the rain. Its destiny was darkness and rain. I came to Womack Road from Sandy Ridge, when red shoemakes were nodding with the dew. The sun rose even with the Seaton Ridge. Under the leaves a golden ray came through. Man with horse and buggy passed me by. A jarfly sang upon the weedy hill. A mallard duck flew over with a cry. A crow flew by with something in its bill. I went the Womack Road from Sandy Ridge, when red shoemakes were drinking back the dew. The moon rose even with the Seaton Ridge. Under the leaves a silver ray came through. I could pick blackberries along the way, for moonlight on the fields was bright as day. Farewell to springtime in Kentucky hills. Farewell to dogwood blossoms and percoon, to blood root in the wind and daffodils, to wild plum blossoms and white April moon. Farewell to walnut trees beside the river. Farewell to April's sky-blue singing brooks. Farewell to young, thin April leaves that quiver. Farewell to white clouds mirrored in the brooks. Farewell to spring wheat waving in the wind, and rank potatoes bursting from the ground. Farewell to shower clouds watery thinned, and to the far-off cowbell's lonely sound. Farewell to April and bright bull-tongue plows. Farewell to green pastures and spotted cows. Kentucky Mountaineer by Jesse Stewart. Oh, to be in England, now that April's there. And whoever wakes in England sees some morning unaware that the lowest boughs in the brushwood sheaf round the elm tree bole are in tiny leaf, when the chaffinch sings in the orchard bough in England, now. And after April, when May follows, and the whitethroat builds, and all the swallows, hark, where my blossomed pear tree in the hedge leans to the field and scatters on the clover blossoms and dewdrops at the bent spade's edge. That's the wise thrush. He sings each song twice over, lest you should think he never could recapture the first fine, careless rapture. And, though the fields look rough with hoary dew, all will be gay when noontide wakes anew the buttercups, the little children's dower, far brighter than this gaudy melon flower. Home Thoughts from Abroad by Robert Browning. Oh, why do you walk through the fields in gloves, missing so much and so much? Oh, fat, white woman whom nobody loves, why do you walk through the fields in gloves, when the grass is soft as the breast of doves and shivering sweet to the touch? Oh, why do you walk through the field in gloves, missing so much and so much? To a Lady Seen from the Train by Frances Cornford. Here come real stars to fill the upper skies, and here on earth come emulating flies, that, though they never equal stars in size, and they were never really stars at heart, achieve at times a very star-like start, only, of course, they can't sustain the part. Fireflies in the Garden by Robert Frost. When Eve walked in her garden, with Adam by her side, and God was still the warden, and she was still a bride, how great was her amazement to see when twilight died, the first moons at the casement of evening open wide. But greater than her wonder at star or bird or tree, or afterward at thunder, or delicate deer or bee, was her flushed awe one morning when down the clouded air, with freshened winds for warning, came water everywhere. First Rain by Zoe Atkins. I took the crazy shortcut to the bay, over a fence or two and through a hedge, jumping a private road along the edge. Of backyards full of drying wash it lay. I ran, electric with elation, sweating, impetuous and wild, for a swift plunge in the sea that smiled, quiet and luring, half a mile away. This was the final thrill, the last sensation that capped 4 hours of violence and laughter. To have, with casual friends and casual jokes, hard sport, a cold swim and fresh linen after. And now, the last set being played and over, I hurried past the ruddy lakes of clover. I swung my racket at astonished oaks, my arm still tingling from aggressive strokes. Tennis was over for the day. I took the leaping shortcut to the bay. Then the swift plunge into the cool green dark. The windy waters rushing past me, through me, filled with the sense of some heroic lark, exulting in a vigor clean and roomy. Swiftly I rose to meet the feline sea that sprang upon me with 100 claws, and grappled, pulled me down, and played with me. Then, tense and breathless in the tightening pause, when one wave grows into a toppling acre, I dived headlong to the foremost breaker, pitting against a cold and turbulent strife the feverish intensity of life. Out of the foam I lurched and rode the wave, swimming hand over hand against the wind. I felt the sea's vein pounding, and I grinned, knowing I was its master, not its slave. Oh, the proud total of those lusty hours, the give and take of rough and vigorous tussles with happy sinews and rejoicing muscles. The knowledge of my own miraculous powers, feeling the force in one small body bent to curve and tame this towering element. Back on the curving beach I stood again, facing the bathhouse when a group of men, stumbling beneath some sort of weight, went by. I could not see the hidden thing they carried. I only heard. He never gave a cry. Who's going to tell her? Yes, and they just married. Such a good swimmer, too. And then they passed, leaving the silence throbbing and aghast. A moment there my buoyant heart hung slack, and then the glad barbaric blood came back, singing a livelier tune, and in my pulse beat the great wave that surges and exults. Why I was there, and whither I must go, I did not care. Enough for me to know the same unresting struggle and the glowing beauty of spendthrift hours, bravely showing life, an adventure perilous and gay, and death a long and vivid holiday. Swimmers by Louise Untermeyer. Yeah, this is one of my favorites as well. Blessings on thee, little man, barefoot boy with cheek of tan, with thy turned-up pantaloons and thy merry whistled tunes, with thy red lip redder still, kissed by strawberries on the hill, with the sunshine on thy face, through thy torn brim's jaunty grace. From my heart I give thee joy, I was once a barefoot boy. Prince thou art, the grown-up man only is republican. Let the $1,000,000 ride, barefoot, trudging at his side, thou hast more than he can buy, in the reach of ear and eye, outward sunshine, inward joy, blessings on thee, barefoot boy. Oh, for boyhood's painless play, sleep that wakes in laughing day, health that mocks the doctor's rules, knowledge never learned of schools. Of the wild bee's morning chase, of the wild flower's time and place, flight of fowl and habitude of the tenants of the wood. How the tortoise bears his shell, how the woodchuck digs his cell, and the ground mole sinks his well. How the robin feeds her young, how the oriole's nest is hung, where the whitest lilies blow, where the freshest berries grow, where the ground-nut trails its vine, where the wood-grape's clusters shine. Of the black wasp's cunning way, mason of his walls of clay, and the architectural plans of grey hornet artisans. For, in shewing books and tasks, nature answers all he asks. Hand in hand with her he walks, face to face with her he talks, part and parcel of her joy, blessings on the barefoot boy. Oh, for boyhood's time of June, crowding years in one brief moon, when all things I heard and saw, me, their master, waited for. I was rich in flowers and trees, hummingbirds and honeybees. For my sport the squirrel plied the snouted mole his spade. For my taste the blackberry cone purpled over hedge and stone. Laughed the brook for my delight, through the day and through the night. Whispering at the garden wall, talked with me from fall to fall. Mine the sand-rimmed pickerel pond, mine the walnut slopes beyond, mine, on bending orchard trees, apples of Hesperides. Still, as my horizon grew, larger grew my riches too, and all the world I saw or knew seemed a complex Chinese toy fashioned for a barefoot boy. Oh, for festal dainties spread, like my bowl of milk and bread, pewter spoon and bowl of wood, on the doorstone grey and rude. O'er me, like a regal tent, cloudy-ribbed, the sunset bent, purple curtained fringed with gold, looped in many a wind-swung fold. Well, for music came the play of the Pied Frogs Orchestra, and, to light the noisy choir, lit the fly his lamp of fire. I was monarch, pomp and joy waited on the barefoot boy. Cheerily, then, my little man, live and laugh as boyhood can. Though the flinty slopes be hard, stubble speared the new-mown sward, every morn shall lead thee through fresh baptisms of the dew. Every evening from thy feet shall the cool wind kiss the heat. All too soon these feet must hide in the prison cells of pride, lose the freedom of the sod, like a colt's for work be shod, made to tread the mills of toil, up and down in ceaseless toil. Ceaseless moil. Happy if their track be found never on forbidden ground. Happy if they sink not in quick and treacherous sands of sin. Ah, that thou couldst know thy joy ere it passes, barefoot boy. The Barefoot Boy by John Greenleaf Whittier. And what is so rare as a day in June? Then, if ever come perfect days, Then heaven tries earth, if it be in tune, and over it softly her warm ear lays. Whether we look, or whether we listen, we hear life murmur or see it glisten. Every clod fills a stir of might, an instinct within it that reaches and towers, and, groping blindly above it for light, climbs to a soul in grass and flowers. The flush of life may well be seen thrilling back over hills and valleys. The cowslip startles in meadows green, the buttercup catches the sun in its chalice. And there's never a leaf nor a blade too mean to be some happy creature's palace. The little bird sits at his door in the sun, a tit like a blossom among the leaves, and lets his illuminated being overrun with the deluge of summer it receives. His mate feels the eggs beneath her wings, and the heart in her dumb breast flutters and sings. He sings the wide world and she to her nest. In the nice ear of nature, which song is the best? Now is the high tide of the year, and whatever of life hath ebbed away comes flooding back again with a ripply cheer into every bare inlet and creek and bay. Now the heart is so full that a drop overfills it. We are happy now because God's will it. No matter how barren the past may have been, 'tis enough for now that leaves are green. We sit in the warm shade and feel right well how the sap creeps up and the blossoms swell. We may shut our eyes, but we cannot help knowing that skies are clear and grass is growing. The breeze comes whispering in our ear that dandelions are blossoming near, that maize has sprouted, that streams are flowing, that the river is bluer than the sky, that the robin is plastering his house hard by. And if the breeze kept the good news back, for other couriers we should not lack. We could guess it all by yon heifer's lowing, and hark! How clear bold Chanticleer, warned with the new wine of the year, tells all in his lusty crowing. Joy comes, grief comes, we know not how. Everything is happy now, everything is upward striving. 'Tis as easy now for the heart to be true, as for grass to be green or skies to be blue. 'Tis the natural way of living. Who knows whither the clouds have fled? In the unscarred heaven they leave no wake. The eyes forget the tears they have shed. The heart forgets its sorrow and ache. The soul partakes the season's youth, and the sulphurous rifts of passion and woe lie deep neath the silence pure and smooth, like burnt-out craters healed with snow. A Day in June by James Russell Lowell. Broom out the floor now, lay the fender by, and plant this bee-suckled bough of woodbine there, and let the window down. The butterfly floats in along upon the sunbeam, in the fair tanned face of June. The nomad gypsy laughs above her widespread wares, the while she tells the farmer's fortunes in the fields, and quaffs the water from the spider-peopled wells. The hedges are all drowned in green grass seas, and bobbing poppies flare like Elmore's light, while siren-like the pollen-strained bees drone in the clover depths. And up the height the cuckoo's voice is hoarse and broke with joy. And on the lowland crops the crows make raid, nor fear the clappers of the farmer's boy, who sleeps like drunken Noah in the shade. And loop this red rose in that hazel ring that snares your little ear, For June is short, and we must joy in it and dance and sing, and from her bounty draw her rosy worth. Aye, soon the swallows will be flying south, the wind wheel north together in the snow, even the roses split on youth's red mouth will soon blow down the road all roses go. June by Frances Ledwidge. Out of the wood of thought that grows by night, to be cut down with the sharp axe of light. Out of the night, two cocks together crow, cleaving the darkness with a silver blow. And bright before my eyes, twin trumpeteers stand, heralds of splendor, one at either hand, each facing each as in a coat of arms. The milkers lace their boots up at the farms. Cock Crow by Edward Thomas. Yes, I remember Addlestrop, the name, because one afternoon of heat the express train drew up there unwontedly. It was late June. The steam hissed. Someone cleared his throat. No one left, and no one came. On the bare platform, what I saw was Addlestrop, only the name. And willows, and willow herb, and grass, and meadow sweet, and haycocks dry. No whit less still and lonely fair than the high cloudlets in the sky. And for that minute a blackbird sang close by, and round him mistier, farther and farther, all the birds of Oxfordshire and Gloucestershire. Addlestrop by Edward Thomas. The kindliest thing God ever made, his hand of very healing laid upon a fevered world, is shade. His glorious company of trees throw out their mantles, and on these the dust-stained wanderer finds ease. Green temples closed against the beat of noontime's blinding glare and heat, open to any pilgrim's feet. The white road blisters in the sun. Now half the weary journey is done. Enter and rest, O weary one. And feel the dew of dawn still wet beneath thy feet, and so forget the burning highway's ache and fret. This is God's hospitality, and whoso rests beneath a tree hath cause to thank him gratefully. Shade by Theodosia Garrison. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine twinkle in the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margins of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced. They outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not be but gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye which is the bliss of solitude, and then my heart with rapture fills, and dances with the daffodils. The Daffodils by William Wordsworth. My heart aches, and a drowsy numbness pains my sense as though of hemlock I had drunk, or emptied some dull opiate to the drains 1 minute past, and the leth wards had sunk. 'Tis not through envy of thy happy lot, but being too happy in thine happiness, that thou, light-winged dryad of the trees, in some melodious plot of beech and green and shadows numberless, singest of summer in full-throated ease. Oh, for a draught of vintage that hath been cooled a long age in the deep-delved earth, tasting of Flora and the country green, dance and provocal song and sun-burnt mirth. Oh, for a beaker full of the warm south, full of the true, the blushful Hippocrene, with beaded bubbles winking at the brim and purple-stained mouth, that I might drink and leave the world unseen, and with thee fade away into the forest dim. Fade, far away, dissolve, and quite forget what thou among the leaves hast never known, the weariness, the fever, and the fret, here, where men sit and hear each other groan, where palsy shakes a few sad, last grey hairs, where youth grows pale and spectre-thin and dies, where but to think is to be full of sorrow and leaden-eyed despairs, where beauty cannot keep her lustrous eyes, or new love pine at them beyond tomorrow. Away, away, for I will fly to thee, not charioted by Bacchus and his pards, but on the viewless wings of poesy. Though the dull brain perplexes and retards, already with thee tender is the night, and happily the queen moon is on her throne, clustered around by all her starry fays. But here there is no light, save what from heaven is with the breezes blown through verdurous glooms and winding mossy ways. I cannot see what flowers are at my feet, nor what soft incense hangs upon the boughs, but in embalmed darkness guess each sweet wherewith the seasonable month endows the grass, the thicket, and the fruit tree wild. White hawthorn and the pastoral eglantine, fast fading violets covered up in leaves, and mid-May's eldest child, the coming musk rose full of dewy wine, the murmurous haunt of flies on summer eves. Darkling, I listen, and for many a time I have been half in love with easeful death, called him soft names in many a mused rhyme, to take into the air my quiet breath. Now more than ever seems it rich to die, to cease upon the midnight with no pain, O thou art pouring forth thy soul abroad in such an ecstasy. Still wouldst thou sing, and I have ears in vain, to thy high requiem become a sod. Thou wast not born for death, immortal bird. No hungry generations tread thee down. The voice I hear this passing night was heard in ancient days by emperor and clown. Perhaps the self-same song that found a path through the sad heart of Ruth, when, sick for home, she stood in tears amid the alien corn. The same that oft times hath charmed magic casements, opening the foam of perilous seas in fairylands forlorn. Forlorn. The very word is like a bell, to toll me back from thee to my soul's self. Adieu. The fancy cannot cheat so well as she is famed to do, deceiving elf. Adieu. Adieu. Thy plaintive anthem fades, past the near meadows, over the still stream, up the hillside, and now 'tis buried deep in the next valley glades. Was it a vision, or a waking dream? Fled is that music, do I wake or sleep? Ode to a Nightingale by John Keats. Beautiful must be the mountains whence ye come, and bright in the fruitful valleys the streams, wherefrom ye learn your song. Where are those starry woods? Oh, might I wander there, among the flowers which in that heavenly air bloom the year long? Nay, barren are those mountains and spent the streams. Our song is the voice of desire that haunts our dreams, a throe of the heart, whose pining visions dim, forbidden hopes profound, no dying cadence nor long sigh can sound, for all our art. Alone, aloud in the raptured ear of men, we pour our dark nocturnal secret, and then, as night is withdrawn from these sweet springing meads and bursting boughs of May, dream, will the innumerable chair of day welcome the dawn. Nightingales by Robert Bridges. I heard a wood thrush in the dusk twirl 3 notes and make a star. My heart that walked with bitterness came back from very far. 3 shining notes were all he had, and yet they made a starry call. I caught life back against my breast and kissed it, scars and all. Wood Song by Sarah Teasdale. This quiet dust was gentlemen and ladies and lads and girls, was laughter and ability and sighing and frocks and curls. This passive place, a summer's nimble mansion, where bloom and bees fulfilled their oriental circuit, then ceased like these. This quiet dust was Gentlemen and Ladies by Emily Dickinson. In idle dalliance now it welcomes weeds. Grasshoppers dance among its unused ways. A rainbow blur of flowers tells of seeds the wind had caught in carefree yesterdays. And resting close beside it, almost dry, a greenish ghost of what was once a stream sags low within its muddy bed, as lie the broken things whose life is but a dream. In memory alone it suffers pain. Informal insect choirs and elfin brass intone a dirge for all who wax and wane, a requiem for all who thrive and pass. Sometimes, beneath the moon, it wakes to see the rotted locks draw open noiselessly. An Abandoned Towpath by Elias Lieberman. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that sends the frozen ground swell under it, and spills the upper boulders in the sun, and makes gaps even 2 can pass abreast. The work of hunters is another thing. I have come after them and made repair, where they have left not 1 stone on a stone. But they would have the rabbit out of hiding to please the yelping dogs. The gaps, I mean. No one has seen them made or heard them made, but at spring mending time we find them there. I let my neighbor know beyond the hill. And on a day we meet to walk the line and set the wall between us once again. We keep the wall between us as we go, to each the boulders that have fallen to each. And some are loaves, and some so nearly balls we have to use a spell to make them balance. Stay where you are until our backs are turned. We wear our fingers rough with handling them. Oh, just another kind of outdoor game, one on a side. it comes to little more. There, where it is, we do not need the wall. He is all pine, and I am apple orchard. My apple trees will never get across and eat the cones under his pines. I tell him. He only says, good fences make good neighbors. Spring is the mischief in me, and I wonder, if I could put a notion in his head, why do they make good neighbors? Isn't it where there are cows? But here there are no cows. Before I built a wall, I'd ask to know what I was walling in or walling out, and to whom I was like to give offence. Something there is that doesn't love a wall, that wants it down. I could say elves to him, but it's not elves exactly, and I'd rather he said it for himself. I see him there, bringing a stone grasped firmly by the top in each hand, like an old stone savage-armed. He moves in darkness, as it seems to me, not of woods only in the shade of trees. He will not go behind his father's saying, and he likes having thought of it so well. He says again, good fences make good neighbors. Mending Wall by Robert Frost. Love at the lips was touch as sweet as I could bear, and once that seemed too much, I lived on air. That crossed me from sweet things the flow of, was it musk? From hidden grapevine springs downhill at dusk. I had the swirl and ache from sprays of honeysuckle that when they're gathered shake dew on the knuckle. I craved strong sweets, but those seemed strong when I was young. The petal of the rose, it was that stung. Now, no joy but lacks salt that is not dashed with pain. And weariness and fault, I crave the stain of tears, the aftermark of almost too much love, a sweet of bitter bark and burning clove. When stiff and sore and scarred, I take away my hand, from leaning on it hard in grass and sand. The hurt is not enough. I long for weight and strength, to feel the earth as rough to all my length. To Earthward by Robert Frost. Slowly, silently, now the moon walks the night in her silver shoon. This way and that, she peers and sees silver fruit upon silver trees. One by one the casements catch her beams beneath the silvery thatch. Couched in his kennel like a log, with paws of silver sleeps the dog. From their shadowy coat the white breasts peep of doves in a silver-feathered sleep. And harvest mouse goes scampering by, with silver claws and a silver eye. And moveless fish in the water gleam, by silver reeds in a silver stream. Silver by Walter de la Mare. When Dobbin and Robin, unharnessed from the plough, stamp smoking to their stalls, they pass beneath the white horses with long manes shining upon the walls, white horses airily leaping through great hoops, all along applauding tracks, or carrying princesses in rosy tights upon their backs. And Daisy, Mage, and Buttercup raise their soft eyes, where through the darkness of the web-hung stable hippopotami arise, shaking the water from their enormous shoulders, floundering in savage mud, showing those muzzles huge enough to ponder an epic cud. And Tom, Beside a rat hole in the boarding meets the still stare of eyes fiercer than his eyes, and a long lithe body above him there. Despondent grow the inmates of the barnyard. Not one achieves the superpowers of those super mammals beneath the eaves. The Circus Postered Barn by Elizabeth Coatsworth. By Zeus! Shout word of this to the eldest dead. Titans, gods, heroes, come who have once more a home. The Grand Canyon by Adelaide Crapsey. Crapsey? Gargantuan ranges of blue-dappled hills roll down titanic coasts of cobalt shires, and inland dreams a sun-struck city's ghost, and herds of moon-calves graze near towered byres. Down the hills a bull-voiced waterfall plunges from cloudy cliffs that climb so high. It shudders like an organ from a hall up stairs that wind into the windy sky. And there are bestial footprints in the sand that twist up rusty roadways red as snakes onto an upland paved with level floors of copper water stagnant in iron lakes. And hooded peaks vault in the clouded wonder, from whence the island's voice drifts out to sea, reverberating words of blatant thunder, dull as a demon's glee. In hills, sequestered meadows, walled with fire, on which evil prayers, like the sphinxes, lie, with flame-like plumes that bloom upon their wings, while red clouds wither by. The eagle's shadow drifts along its cliffs, and in the evening from a mountain's dome, remote as thought, there blurs the sound of drums that call the giants home. Gargantua by Hervey Allen. Whirl up, sea, whirl your pointed pines. Splash your great pines on our rocks. Hurl your green over us. Cover us with your pools of fur. Oread by Hilda Doolittle. They are unholy who are born to love wild plum at night, who once have passed it on a road glimmering and white. It is as though the darkness had speech of silver words, or as though a cloud of stars perched like ghostly birds. They are unpitied from their birth and homeless in men's sight, who love, better than the earth, wild plum at night. Wild Plum by Oric Johns. It's another great one. What is this life if, full of care, we have no time to stand and stare? No time to stand beneath the boughs and stare as long as sheep or cows. No time to see when woods we pass, where squirrels hide their nuts in grass. No time to see in broad daylight streams full of stars like skies at night. No time to turn at beauty's glance and watch her feet how they can dance. No time to wait till her mouth can enrich that smile her eyes began. A poor life this is if, full of care, we have no time to stand and stare. Leisure by W. H. Davies. I wonder about the trees. Why do we wish to bear forevermore the noise of these, more than another noise, so close to our dwelling place? We suffer them by the day, till we lose all measure of pace and fixity in our joys, and acquire a listening air. They are that talks of going, but never gets away, and that talks no less for knowing, as it grows older and wiser, that now it means to stay. My feet tug at the floor, and my head sways to my shoulder. Sometimes when I watch trees sway from the window or the door, I shall set forth for somewhere. I shall make the reckless choice. Some day when they are in voice and tossing so as to scare the white clouds over them on, I shall have less to say, but I shall be gone. The Sound of Trees by Robert Frost. Out of the hills of Habersham, down the valleys of Hall, I hurry amain to reach the plain, run the rapid and leap the fall. Split at the rock and together again, accept my bed, or narrow or wide, and run from folly on every side. With a lover's pain to attain the plain, far from the hills of Habersham, far from the valleys of Hall. All down the hills of Habersham, all through the valleys of Hall, the rushes cried, "Abide, abide." The wilful water-weeds held me thrall. The laving laurel turned my tide. The ferns and the fondling grass said, "Stay." The dewberry dipped for to work delay, and the little reeds sighed, "Abide, abide, here in the hills of Habersham, here in the valleys of Hall." High over the hills of Habersham, veiling the valleys of Hall, the hickory told me manifold fair tales of shade. The poplar tall right me her shadowy self to hold. The chestnut, the oak, the walnut, the pine, overleaning, with flickering meaning and sign said, "Pass not." So cold these manifold, deep shades of the hills of Habersham, these glades in the valleys of Hall. And oft in the hills of Habersham, and oft in the valleys of Hall, the white quartz shone, and the smooth brook stone did bar me of passage with friendly brawl, and many a luminous jewel lone. Crystals clear, or a cloud with mist, ruby, garnet, and amethyst, made lures with the lights of streaming stone in the cleft of the hills of Habersham and the beds of the valleys of Hall. But oh, not the hills of Habersham, and oh, not the valleys of Hall avail. I am fain for to water the plain. Downward the voices of duty call, downward to toil and be mixed with the main. The dry fields burn, the mills are to turn, and a myriad flowers mortally yearn, and the lordly main from beyond the plain calls over the hills of Habersham, calls through the valleys of Hall. Song of the Chattahoochee by Sidney Lanier. How does the water come down at Lodore? From its sources which well in the tarn and the fell, from its fountains in the mountains, its rills and its gills, through moss and through brake, it runs and it creeps for a while till it sleeps in its own little lake, and thence at departing, awaking and starting, it runs through the reeds, and away it proceeds, through meadow and glade, in sun and in shade, and through the wood shelter, among crags in its flurry, helter-skelter, hurry-scurry. Here it comes sparkling, and there it lies darkling, now smoking and frothing, its tumult and wrath in, till in this rapid race on which it is bent, it reaches the place of its steep descent, the cataract strong, then plunges along, striking and raging, as if a war waging, its caverns and rocks among. Rising and leaping, sinking and creeping, swelling and sweeping, showering and springing, flying and flinging, writhing and ringing, eddying and whisking, sprouting and frisking, turning and twisting around and around with endless rebound, smiting and fighting, a sight to delight in, confounding, astounding, dizzying and deafening the earth with its sound. Collecting, projecting, receding and speeding and shocking and rocking and darting and parting and threading and spreading and whizzing and hissing and dripping and skipping and hitting and spitting and shining and twinning and rattling and battling and shaking and quaking and pouring and raving and waving and raving and roaring and tossing and crossing and flowing and going and running and stunning and foaming and roaming and dining and spinning and dropping and hopping and working and jerking and gurgling and struggling and heaving and cleaving and moaning and groaning and glittering and flittering and gathering and feathering and whitening and brightening and quivering and shivering and hurrying and scurrying and thundering and floundering. Dividing and gliding and sliding and falling and brawling and sprawling and driving and riving and striving and sprinkling and twinkling and wrinkling and sounding and bounding and rounding and bubbling and troubling and doubling and grumbling and rumbling and tumbling and clattering and battering and shattering, retreating and beating and meeting and cheating, delaying and straying and playing and spraying, advancing and prancing and glancing and dancing, recoiling, turmoiling and toiling and boiling and gleaming and streaming and steaming and beaming and rushing and flushing and brushing and pushing and flapping and rapping and clapping and slapping and curling and whirling and purling and twirling and thumping and plumping and bumping and jumping and dashing and flashing and splashing and clashing, and so ever ending, but so never ending, but always descending, sounds and motions forever and ever are blending. All at once and all over, with a mighty uproar, all this way the water comes down at Lodore. The Cataract of Lodore by Robert Southey. Why should this Negro insolently stride down the red noonday on such noiseless feet? Pied in his barrow, tinier than wheat, lie heaps of smouldering daisies, sombre-eyed, their copper petals shriveled up with pride, hot with the superfluity of heat, like a great brazier borne along the street by captive leopards, black and burning pied. Are there no water lilies, smooth as cream, with long stems dripping crystal? Are there none like those white lilies, luminous and cool, plucked from some hemlock-darkened northern stream, by fair-haired swimmers, diving where the sun scarce warms the surface of the deepest pool? August, by Eleanor Wiley. All day long I have been working. Now I am tired. I call, "Where are you?" But there is only the oak tree rustling in the wind. The house is very quiet. The sun shines in on your books, on your scissors and thimble just put down, but you are not there. Suddenly I am lonely. Where are you? I go about searching. Then I see you, standing under a spile of pale blue larkspur, with a basket of roses on your arm. You are cool, like silver, and you smile. I think the Canterbury bells are playing little tunes. You tell me the peonies need spraying. The columbines have overrun all bounds. The Pyrrhus japonica should be cut back and rounded. You tell me these things, but I look at you, heart of silver, white heart flame of polished silver, burning beneath the blue steeples of the larkspur, and I long to kneel instantly at your feet, while all about us peal the loud, sweet dedeumes of the Canterbury bells. Madonna of the Evening Flowers by Amy Lowell. Lilacs. False blue, white, purple, color of lilac. Your great puffs of flowers are everywhere in this my New England. Among your heart-shaped leaves, orange orioles hop like music box birds and sing their little weak, soft songs. In the crooks of your branches, the bright eyes of song sparrows sitting on spotted eggs peer restlessly through the light and shadow of all springs. Lilacs in dooryards, holding quiet conversations with an early moon. Lilacs watching a deserted house, settling sideways into the grass of an old road. Lilacs, wind-beaten, staggering under a lopsided shock of bloom, above a cellar dug into a hill. You are everywhere. You were everywhere. You tapped the window when the preacher preached his sermon, and ran along the road beside a boy going to school. You stood by pasture bars to give the cows good milking. You persuaded the housewife that her dishpan was of silver, and her husband an image of pure gold. You flaunted the fragrance of your blossoms through the wide doors of custom houses. You, and sandalwood and tea, charging the noses of quill-driving clerks when a ship was in from China. You called to them, goose-quill men, May is a month for flirting, until they writhed in their high stools and wrote poetry on their letter sheets behind the propped-up ledgers. Paradoxical New England clerks, writing inventories and ledgers, reading the Song of Solomon at night, so many verses before bedtime, because it was the Bible. The dead fed you amid the slant stones of graveyards. Pale ghosts who planted you came in the night time and let their thin hair blow through your clustered stems. You are of the green sea, and of the stone hills which reach long distance. You are of elm-shaded streets with little shops where they sell kites and marbles. You are of great parks where everyone walks and nobody is at home. You cover the blind sides of greenhouses and lean over the top to say a hurry word through the glass to your friends, the grapes inside. Lilacs, false blue, white, purple, color of lilac, you have forgotten your Eastern origin. The veiled women with eyes like panthers, the swollen, aggressive turbans of jeweled pashas. Now you are a very decent flower, a reticent flower, a curiously clear-cut, candid flower, standing beside clean doorways, friendly to a house cat and a pair of spectacles, making poetry out of a bit of moonlight and 100 or 2 sharp blossoms. Maine knows you, has for years and years. New Hampshire knows you, and Massachusetts and Vermont. Cape Cod starts you along the beaches to Rhode Island. Connecticut takes you from a river to the sea. You are brighter than apples, sweeter than tulips. You are the great flood of our souls bursting above the leap shapes of our hearts. You are the smell of all summers, the love of wives and children, the recollection of the gardens of little children. You are state houses and charters, and the familiar treading of the foot to and fro on a road it knows. May is lilac here in New England. May is thrush singing sun up on a tip-top ash tree. May is white clouds behind pine trees puffed out and marching upon a blue sky. May is green as no other, May is as much sun through small leaves. May is soft earth and apple blossoms and windows open to a south wind. May is a full light wind of lilac from Canada to Narragansett Bay. Lilacs, false blue, white, purple, color of lilac, heart leaves of lilac all over New England, roots of lilac under all the soil of New England. Lilac in me because I am New England, because my roots are in it, because my leaves are of it, because my flowers are for it, because it is my country. When I speak to it of itself, and sing of it with my own voice, since certainly it is mine. Lilacs by Amy Lowell. All right, this one's about as famous as you get. O wild west wind, thou breath of autumn's being, thou, from whose unseen presence leaves dead are driven, like ghosts from an enchanter fleeing. Yellow and black and pale and hectic red, pestilence-stricken multitudes, O thou, who chariotest to their dark wintry bed. The winged scenes, where they lie cold and low, each like a corpse within its grave, until thine azure sister of the spring shall blow her clarion o'er the dreaming earth and fill, driving sweet buds like flocks to feed in air, with living hues and odors plain and hill. A wild spirit which art moving everywhere, destroyer and preserver, hear, oh hear. Thou, on whose stream, mid the steep sky's commotion, loose clouds like earth's decaying leaves are shed, shook from the tangled boughs of heaven and ocean. Angels of rain and lightning, there are spread on the blue surface of thine airy surge, like the bright hair uplifted from the head of some fierce Meniad, even from the dim verge of the horizon to the zenith height, the locks of the approaching storm. Thou dirge of the dying year, to which this closing night will be the dome of a vast sepulture, vaulted with all thy congregated might, of vapours from whose solid atmosphere black rain and fire and hail will burst. Oh, hear. Thou, who didst waken from his summer dreams the blue Mediterranean where he lay, lulled by the coil of his crystalline streams beside a pumice isle in Bay's Bay, and saw in sleep old palaces and towers quivering within the waves' intenser day, all overgrown with azure moss and flowers so sweet, the scent faints, picturing them. Thou, for whose path the Atlantic level powers cleave themselves into chasms while far below the sea blooms, and the oozy woods which wear the sapless foliage of the ocean, know thy voice and suddenly grow grey with fear, and tremble and despoil themselves, oh, hear. If I were a dead leaf thou mightest bear, if I were a swift cloud to fly with thee, a wave to pant beneath thy power, and share the impulse of thy strength, only less free than thou, O uncontrollable. If even I were as in my boyhood, and could be the comrade of thy wanderings over heaven, as then, when to outstrip thy skiey speed scarce seemed a vision, I would ne'er have striven as thus with thee in prayer in my sore need. Oh, lift me as a wave, a leaf, a cloud. I fall upon the thorns of life, I bleed. A heavy weight of hours has chained and bowed one too like thee, tameless and swift and proud. Make me thy lyre, even as the forest is. What if my leaves are falling like its own? The tumult of thy mighty harmonies will take from both a deep autumnal tone, sweet though in sadness. Be thou, spirit fierce, my spirit, be thou me, impetuous one. Drive my dead thoughts over the universe like withered leaves to quicken a new birth. And, by the incantation of this verse, scatter, as from an unextinguished hearth, ashes and sparks, my words among mankind. Be, through my lips, to unawakened earth, the trumpet of a prophecy. O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind? Ode to the West Wind by Percy Bysshe Shelley. Season of mist and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more later flowers for the bees until they think warm days will never cease, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Who hath not seen thee oft amid thy store? Sometimes whoever seeks abroad may find thee sitting careless on a granary floor, thy hair soft lifted by the winnowing wind, or on a half-reaped furrow sound asleep, drowsed in the fume of poppies, while thy hook spares the next swath and all its twinned flowers. And sometimes, like a gleaner, thou dost keep steady thy leaden head across a brook, or by a cider press with patient look, thou watchest the last oozings hours by hours. Where are the songs of spring? Ay, where are they? Think not of them, thou hast thy music too. Will barred clouds bloom the soft dying day, and touch the stubble plains with rosy hue? Then in a wailful choir the small gnats mourn among the river sallows, borne aloft or sinking as the light wind lives or dies. And full-grown lambs loud bleat from hilly bourne. Hedge crickets sing, and now with treble soft the red breast whistles from a garden croft, and gathering swallows twitter in the skies. To Autumn by John Keats. There is something in the autumn that is native to my blood, touch of manner, hint of mood, and my heart is like a rhyme, with the yellow and the purple and the crimson keeping time. The scarlet of the maples can shake me like a cry of bugles going by, and my lonely spirit thrills to see the frosty asters like smoke upon the hills. There is something in October sets the gypsy blood astir. We must rise and follow her, when from every hill of flame she calls and calls each vagabond by name. A Vagabond's Song by Bliss Carmar. Behold her, single in the field, yon solitary Highland lass, reaping and singing by herself. Stop here, or gently pass. Alone she cuts and binds the grain, and sings a melancholy strain. Oh, listen, for the vale profound is overflowing with the sound. No nightingale that ever chaunt more welcome notes to weary bands of travellers in some shady haunt among Arabian sands. A voice so thrilling ne'er was heard in springtime from the cuckoo bird, breaking the silence of the seas among the farthest Hebrides. Will no one tell me what she sings? Perhaps the plaintive numbers flow for old, unhappy, far-off things, and battles long ago. Or is it some more humble lay, familiar matter of today, some natural sorrow, loss, or pain that has been and may be again? Whate'er the theme, the maiden sang as if her song could have no ending. I saw her singing at her work and o'er the sickle bending. I listened, motionless and still, and, as I mounted up the hill, music in my heart I bore long after it was heard no more. The Solitary Reaper by William Wordsworth. Mowers, weary and brown and blithe, what is the word methinks ye know? Endless overword, the scythe sings the blades of the grass below. Scythe that swing in the grass and clover, something still, they say as they pass. What is the word that, over and over, sings the scythe, the flowers and grass? Hush, ah, hush, the scythes are saying. Hush, and heed not, and fall asleep. Hush, they say to the grasses swaying. Hush, they sing to the clover deep. Hush, 'tis the lullaby time is singing. Hush, and heed not, for all things pass. Hush, ah, hush. The sighs are swinging over the clover, over the grass. Scythe Song by Andrew Lang. When the frost is on the pumpkin, and the fodder's in the shock, and they hear your kyuk and gobble of the struttling turkey-cock, and the clankin' of the guineas, and the cluckin' of the hens, and the rooster's hally-lover as he tiptoes on the fence. Oh, then it's the time a feller is a-feelin' at his best, with the risin' sun to greet him from a night of peaceful rest. As he leaves the house, bare-headed, and goes out to feed the stock, when the frost is on the punkin, and the fodder's in the shock. There's something kinda hearty-like about the atmosphere. The heat of summer's over, the coolin' fall is here. Of course we miss the flowers, and the blossoms on the trees, and the mumble of the hummingbirds and buzzin' of the bees. But the air's so appetizin', the landscape through the haze of a crisp and sunny morning of the airy autumn days is a picture that no painter has the colourin' to mock, when the frost is on the punkin and the fodder's in the shock. The husky, rusty rustle of the tossels of the corn, and the raspin' of the tangled leaves is golden as the morn. The stubble and the furries, kinda lonesome-like, but still the preachin' sermons to us the barns they growed to fill. The straw stack in the medder, and the reaper in the shed, tosses in their stalls below the clover overhead. Oh, it sets my heart a-clickin' like the tickin' of a clock. The frost is on the punkin, and the fodder's in the shock. Then your apples all is gathered, the ones a feller keeps, is poured around the cellar floor in red and yaller heaps. And your cider makin's over, and your women folks is through, with their mince and apple butter, and the sauce and sausage too. I don't know how to tell it, but if such a thing could be, as the angels wantin' boardin', and they'd call around on me, I'd want to accommodate 'em, all the whole endurin' flock, when the frost is on the punkin and the fodder's in the shock. When the frost is on the punkin, by James Whitcomb Riley. When I stepped homeward to my hill, dusk went before with quiet tread. The bare-laced branches of the trees were as a mist about its head. Upon its leaf-brown breast the rocks like great grey sheep lay silent-wise. Between the birch trees' gleaming arms the faint stars trembled in the skies. The white brook met me halfway up, and laughed, as one that knew me well, whose more clear than crystal voice the frost had joined a crystal spell. The skies lay like pale water deep. Dusk ran before me to its strand, and cloudily leaned forth to touch the moon's slow wonder with her hand. Homecoming by Leonie Adams. Bound to a boy's swift feet, hard blades of steel ring out a brutal rhythm from black ice. A gawky skater with a godlike heel, he cuts a clear and convolute device, a foliated script, nor looks around to see what letters twine where he has come. But, all delighted with the savage sound, his body beats from such a solid drum. He springs into a faster pace, and then, far down the pastures, paper-white and pure, you see his figure slanted like a pen, writing his own and Winter's signature. River Skater by Winifred Wells. What heart could have thought you, past our devisal, O filigree petal, fashioned so purely, frailly, surely, from what paradisal, imaginous metal too costly for cost, who hammered you, wrought you from argentine vapour? God was my shaper. Passing surmissal, he hammered, he wrought me from curled silver vapour to lust of his mind. Thou couldst not have thought me so purely, so palely, tinnily, surely, mightily, frailly, insculpted and embossed with his hammer of wind and his graver of frost. To a Snowflake by Francis Thompson. Announced by all the trumpets of the sky, arrives the snow, and, driving over the fields, seems nowhere to alight. The whited air hides hills and woods, the river and the heaven, and veils the farmhouse, the garden's end, the sled and travellers stopped, the courier's feet delayed, all friends shut out. The housemates sit around the radiant fireplace, enclosed in a tumultuous privacy of storm. Come see the north wind's masonry. Out of an unseen quarry, evermore, furnished with tile, the fierce artificer curves his white bastions with projected roof, round every windward stake or tree or door. Speeding, the myriad-handed his wild work, so fanciful, so savage, naught cares he for number or proportion. Mockingly, on coop or kennel, he hangs Parian wreaths, a swan-like form infests the hidden thorn, fills up the farmer's lane from wall to wall, maugre the farmer's sighs, and, at the gate, a tampering turret overtops the work. And when his hours are numbered and the world is all his own, retiring as he were not, leaves when the sun appears astonished art to mimic in slow structures stone by stone, built in an age the mad wind's night work, the frolic architecture of the snow. The Snowstorm by Ralph Waldo Emerson. Let us walk in the white snow in a soundless space, with footsteps quiet and slow, and a tranquil pace under veils of white lace. I shall go shod in silk, and you in wool, white as a white cow's milk, more beautiful than the breast of a gull. We shall walk through the still town in a windless peace. We shall step upon white down, upon silver fleece, upon softer than these. We shall walk in velvet shoes. Wherever we go, silence will fall like dews on white silence below. We shall walk in the snow. Velvet Shoes by Eleanor Wiley. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkness evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sound's the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Now let the garden sleep. Bank the red coals of your impatience under the ash of prunings and raked leaves, and swing your eager glance by the late rising, early setting sun's short and remoter arc. This is no hour to sweep the quiet, self-sufficient dark with flame. Earth has forgotten fire, to light indifferent grown. Night and the north alone attend her now. Colder than ocean, cold as stone her blood, her pulses slow in long libational rhythm. Therefore, if you would haunt the garden paths, ally, not alien, go in winter's way. Not one superfluous candle in your eyes, nor heat of haste searing the ground with footprints. Rather in shoes heavy with gathered snow, or padded with thick cling of sodden leaves, your breath, a cloud of chilly vapor, drift through the barren quiet like a sleepy mist that coldly mingers with an austere dream. Winter Reverie by Sarah Bard Field. That is the chapter titled Under the Open Sky. Poetry to pass us by.